My name is Grace, and there was a summer, when I was 6, that changed the way I saw the world, and myself. That afternoon was so sweltering, the air felt like it clung to my skin. I was rummaging through my grandma's attic in Charleston, South Carolina, looking for my old ballet slippers for show and tell at school. I remember being so excited, thinking I'd get to talk about my dance lessons Mom once called adorable. But what I found instead was a dust-covered, unmarked VHS tape sitting inside an old shoebox. Curious, I brought it downstairs to the living room, where the ancient VCR still sat under the curved screen TV. When the screen flickered on, there they were. My parents. Younger, beaming, their eyes filled with joy. "We're so thrilled to share this amazing news," my mom said, her hand resting gently on her belly. "After years of trying, we're finally having a baby boy." My dad, with the mustache he'd later shave, squeezed her shoulder and added, "The doctor confirmed it yesterday. A boy, finally an heir to the Rockwell name." Tears welled up in Mom's eyes as she smiled. "Our family will finally be complete." I sat there, legs crossed on the worn gray carpet, unable to look away from the screen. This wasn't a video of Mom pregnant with me. I knew that because the timestamp in the corner read 2009. But my younger brother, Ethan, was born in 2014. It hit me like a punch to the chest. If that tape was from 2009, and I was born in 2010, then that meant I was the first failed attempt. "Grace, what are you watching?" I jumped. It was Grandma Clara, standing in the doorway with a basket of neatly folded laundry. She looked at the screen, and for a moment, all the clothes slipped from her arms and spilled across the wooden floor. "Oh, sweetheart," she gasped, rushing forward to turn off the TV. "You weren't supposed to see that." I looked up at her, voice barely a whisper. "They always wanted a boy. From the very beginning." She knelt down, her knees cracking, but she didn't care. She pulled me into her arms, smelling of lavender and old-fashioned soap. But this time, even her warmth couldn't stop the tears from falling. "Sometimes adults get stuck on what they think they want," she murmured. "But that doesn't define who you are." I pulled back and looked her straight in the eyes. "Is that why they sent me to live with you?" I asked. "Because I wasn't the boy they wanted?" She said nothing. Not a word. Just silence. And in that silence, I got my answer. For a whole year, I'd been living with Grandma Clara. I used to think it was because I was special. That I helped her with gardening and baking because I was capable. Because I was trusted. But now, it was clear. They were starting over. With the right child. That night, she tucked me into bed, brushed the hair from my forehead and whispered, "No matter what happens, you'll always have me." I nodded, but something inside me cracked. The little girl who used to chase after her parents' hugs and praise. She was gone. In her place, someone else began to emerge. A child who understood that love didn't always come fairly, and if it wasn't given, maybe it had to be taken. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning of a long game I was about to learn how to play. And I was going to play it very, very well. 2 years after I found that tape, I returned to the house I once called home. I was 8 then, old enough, according to my mother, to lend a hand. I still remember that day clearly. Fall had come early to Tennessee, golden leaves covering the walkway up to the porch. My dad opened the door with a stiff smile, and my mom gave me a quick hug, before rushing to get Ethan, my little brother, out of the car. "You'll love your new room," she said as I stepped inside. But I froze in the hallway. The room that used to be mine. The mint green walls, the star stickers I had carefully arranged, was gone. The walls had been repainted, in a bright orange. My old desk was replaced with shelves full of toys and a train-shaped tent. "We thought Ethan needed more space," my mom explained, avoiding eye contact. "You'll be in the guest room at the end of the hall. It has great lighting." That room had once been for guests. Small, no windows, no pictures. Just an old wooden bed and a creaky dresser. I nodded, because that's what a good girl was supposed to do. But inside, something cold began to settle. During those first few weeks, I nearly disappeared into the background. Everything in the house revolved around Ethan. When he slept, when he ate, when he played, even when he pooped on schedule. Grace, go soothe your brother. Grace, watch Ethan while I run to the store. Didn't you see him putting that in his mouth? I became a living radar for every move the energetic 2-year-old made. One sweltering afternoon in June, my mom shoved a water bottle and snack bag into my hands. Take Ethan to the park, he needs to run around. I strapped him into the stroller, even though he kept wriggling to walk. We headed to Birchwood Park, about 10 minutes from home. I chose a bench under a shady tree, eyes still locked on his wobbly steps. Then I heard a familiar voice. Grace, is that really you? I turned, it was Mia. From preschool. Her red curls were just like I remembered. She beamed. Everyone said you moved away, you missed so much. We chatted for a few minutes, about old teachers, the upcoming school fair, and the new band program. But then, a scream cut through the air. Ethan! I ran. He had climbed near the top of the pirate ship's slide. Arms flailing. Barely balanced. I didn't reach him in time. The sound of him hitting the ground froze everything inside me. His left arm swelled, and blood trickled from his knee. A stranger called an ambulance. I was in shock but still held him close, whispering through tears. The hospital was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like a lifetime. When my parents arrived, I stood waiting. Shirt stained with blood, eyes red and puffy. My mom saw Ethan's bandaged arm, then turned to me, her face pale. What happened? What did you do? It was an all-accident look for most of the day. A second is all it takes, Grace. How irresponsible can you be? My dad gripped my shoulder so hard it hurt. We trusted you with him, and this is what happens? As they yelled at me like I'd committed a crime. Ethan! His arm wrapped in a Sky New Poly cast. Played with a toy car. Oblivious. That night, when everyone was asleep, I crept to the kitchen for water. The living room light was still on. I paused when I heard my mom's voice. Maybe we brought her back too soon, she said. She's not mature enough to watch Ethan. What choice did we have? My dad replied. We can't afford a nanny, and my mother's too old. I thought she'd understand responsibility. Be more like a boy. I stood there, back pressed against the wall, fists clenched so tight they ached. I wasn't the heir. I was the backup plan. I didn't go back to my room. I walked into Ethan's, standing in silence, as he slept peacefully under a soft yellow nightlight. I didn't blame him, but he was living the life I never had. Back in my room, I picked up the phone Grandma Clara gave me for emergencies. My thumb hovered over her name. Then I put it down. No. I couldn't keep running. If they saw me as a shadow, then that shadow would learn to move in silence. And I'd make sure they never dared to underestimate me again. When I was 13, I learned something important. The people who claim to love you the most are sometimes the ones quietly planning to push you out, systematically, without ever saying a word. That night, I left my room because I was too hungry to sleep. The kitchen was at the end of the hallway, just past my father's study. A room always kept shut, smelling of pine wood and stale tobacco, soaked into old investment ledgers. The door was cracked open, a faint strip of light spilling out. I froze when I heard his voice. You know, the market's doing pretty well these days, he said in that steady, low tone. If we start shifting money now, Ethan's college fund could hit 80 grand by the time he's 18. I held my breath. Mom replied, her voice barely above a whisper. And what about high school? You still like St. Jude, right? They've got a strong athletic program, great for NCAA scholarships. I stood paralyzed. Ethan was only 6. He'd just finished kindergarten. I was starting 8th grade next year. No one had ever said a word about me. No plan, no savings. "What about Grace?" Mom finally asked. Her voice so soft I almost missed it. "She's starting high school soon. Public school is good enough. She's smart. She'll get scholarships," Dad said. Then he added something I'd never forget. "Worst case, community college. Saves money." I had to press myself against the wall to keep from collapsing. That phrase, "saves money," cut deeper than any insult. The next morning, Mom was cutting Ethan's pancakes into perfect little squares, while Dad quizzed him on multiplication. I sat across from them, staring at my soggy cereal, with a rising nausea. "I got a perfect score on the biology test," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Mr. Jordan said it's the highest he's seen in 3 years." Mom nodded without looking up. "Ah, that's great, honey. Don't forget you're watching Ethan today," Dad added. "We've got that meeting with his coach." I set my spoon down. The clink against the bowl was sharp, deliberate. "Actually, I can't. I have a prep session with the AP group. If I pass the test, I can take college-level classes next year." This time Mom looked up, her brow furrowed. "Since when?" "Last month, I told you 3 times." They exchanged glances. Neither remembered. Of course they didn't. "Reschedule it," Dad said, still not meeting my eyes. "This meeting is important for Ethan's future." And something in me shattered. Then reformed. Like molten glass, cooling into a blade. "What about my future?" I asked, my voice strangely calm. Silence gripped the kitchen. "Grace," Mom said sharply, "you're overreacting." "I asked one simple question," I said. "Why does Ethan get a college fund, a private school, a personal coach, and I get a windowless room, and the excuse that, 'She's smart, she'll figure it out'?" Dad set his coffee cup down, gently. But his stare cut like steel. "You're making this more complicated than it is. This family has always supported your education." I laughed. It sounded nothing like laughter. "Really? Then why did I overhear you talking last night about sending Ethan to private school while I go to community college? Because it's cheaper?" Mom's face drained of color. Her hands trembled slightly. "You were eavesdropping?" "No. I was existing in this house." I stood, the chair scraping loudly against the tile. "But don't worry, I get it now. Ethan is the investment. I'm the consequence." I turned and walked out, ignoring her calling my name. On the way to school, I made a decision. If they wanted me to be independent, I'd show them what true independence looks like. I wouldn't need them. I wouldn't wait for their approval. I would go farther than anyone in this family ever dreamed. The day I got my acceptance letter from Stanford, I didn't cry. I just stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, clutching the heavy envelope with its embossed seal. Full tuition, housing, books, everything covered. I had done it. Without them. Without anyone but myself. I placed the envelope on the table just as my parents and Ethan walked in after baseball practice. Mom set down the sports bag. "What's that, Grace?" "I got into Stanford, full scholarship." "Oh, that's great," she said with a quick smile. "Richard, did you hear? Grace got into college." "Yeah," Dad replied, eyes still on the little trophy in Ethan's hand. "Good for you. But how are you planning to survive in California? It's expensive." "I have the scholarship," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I've been saving since 6th grade." "Ah," Dad turned away, his tone suddenly evasive. "About that, there's been a change." I went cold. "What kind of change?" Mom stepped forward, pulling a stack of letters from the drawer, her voice shrinking, as if bracing for impact. "We had to use that money for Ethan's summer training. Pro teams expect private coaching and specialized camps." "That was my money," I snapped, each word cutting like a blade. Money I saved from tutoring, birthdays. Every dollar Grandma Clara ever sent. Dad folded his arms. It was in a joint account under our names. Legally, it's still family property. I stared directly at them. Family? You don't even have a photo of me past the age of 6 on the wall. That night, I called Grandma Clara. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. She arranged to meet me at the hospital, still recovering from knee surgery. There's something you need to know, I said when I arrived. The money you've been sending every month. I never got any of it. Her face went pale. What did you say? Mom and Dad told me I didn't need it. They took it all. For Ethan. Her hand trembled, but her voice was steel. Can you send me the bank statements? I nodded. She squeezed my hand gently. Grace, listen to me, she whispered. This ends now, let me handle it. 3 days later, my parents walked into her hospital room with a bouquet of flowers and fake smiles. They had no idea I was behind the curtain. We heard the surgery went well, Mom said sweetly. We wanted to ask if you could help Ethan with some tuition again. He's got a huge opportunity and we just... Get out of my room, Grandma Clara cut in, her voice ice cold. Even the nurse nearby froze. Mom blinked. Mother, what's wrong? I know everything. The $500, 0 cents. Every month. The savings Grace worked so hard for. You took it all to invest in the child you decided was worthy. We only wanted the best for both of them. Don't lie to me, she snapped. You only cared about Ethan, you treated Grace like a shadow, worse than a stranger. I stepped out from behind the curtain and stood beside her. My parents turned ghost white. Ever wanted was to go to college, I said. Not a mansion, not a car. Just a future of my own. Grace, my mother stammered. You don't understand. No, Mom, you don't. I pulled out the printed statements. It's all here. Enough to take you to court. But I won't. That's a relief, Dad exhaled. Not because I'm letting it go, I said, turning away. But because I don't want anything more to do with you. Good luck raising the child you bet everything on. On the way home, Grandma Clara held my hand tightly. You did the right thing. But it's not over. They'll come back when they need something. I know, I said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Next time, I'll be ready. I'm not chasing the money back, but I will reclaim the worth they tried to erase. Stanford wasn't a place to rest. For me, it was a battlefield. A place I had to fight every single day just to survive, without letting anyone see how exhausted I truly was. I juggled 3 jobs, teaching assistant by day, coffee barista in the mornings near campus, and freelance data entry at night. Some nights I got only 2 hours of sleep, my hands shaking as I held my pen. But I still walked into class with the same practiced smile. No one knew I had less than $10 in my wallet. No one knew I'd been living off dry bread for 3 days because tuition had gone up. But I didn't back down. I couldn't. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the look in my dad's eyes when he said, community college is good enough for her. I remembered my mom slicing pancakes for Ethan while I buried my face in textbooks, and no one asked if I needed anything. I remembered the bank statements, empty accounts, silent betrayals. I turned the pain into fuel. 5 years after stepping foot on Stanford's campus, I stood on the 22nd floor of a glass building in San Francisco, in the office of a top investment firm. My business card read, Senior Financial Analyst, Grace Rockwell. I made it. On my own. I had my own apartment, overlooking the bay, a 6-figure savings account, and, at last, a real family. I met Owen at a sustainable finance conference. He wasn't like anyone I'd known. No bragging, no guessing my intentions. He listened, patiently, and never flinched at the darker parts of my story. We married a year later, with only Grandma Clara as our witness. Finn was born on a rainy day in early spring. Holding him in my arms, I felt something I had never received from my parents. Unconditional love. Not tied to gender, performance, or image. Just love. For being. I thought I had closed the door on the past. Until the email arrived. "Hi, sweetie. It's Mom. Your dad and we're in trouble. Ethan's been arrested. We need your help." I reread it, thinking I'd misread, but then another came through, along with a local news link. Former high school athlete accused of embezzling over $60,000, 0 cents from team funds. "Ethan, are you going to respond?" Owen asked when I showed him the messages. I didn't answer. I looked at Finn sleeping peacefully in his crib, his tiny hands twitching like he was dreaming of clouds. "If it were really about me," I said, "they wouldn't have waited until now to reach out. And now they want money." I nodded. 50,000. For legal fees. "You don't owe them a thing, Grace." I knew that. But what kept me awake that night wasn't the money. It was the memory of a gap-toothed little boy who used to wrap his hand around mine at the park. He hadn't asked to be the chosen one. I almost sent the money, until the second line appeared on the pregnancy test. I was expecting again. And suddenly, every trace of hesitation vanished. I couldn't repeat the cycle. I couldn't teach Finn that love means being used by people who call themselves family. I sat down and wrote my response. "I'm not your fallback. I'm not the family ATM. I'm not the forgotten daughter. I'm a mother. And my child will grow up in a home that understands fairness." Then I blocked every number, every email, and transferred the $50,000, 0 cents, into Finn's education fund. The difference was this. No one else could touch it. No shared accounts. No loopholes. I made a promise to myself. The past doesn't get to repeat, not even once. I never planned on returning to the old house in Franklin. But then Grandma Clara was diagnosed with early-stage heart failure, and during a quiet November afternoon call, said gently, "This might be the last Thanksgiving we're strong enough to sit at the table together." I couldn't say no. For her. Not for them. That evening, wearing my long brown coat, I held Finn's hand as we walked through the wooden door that had slammed in my face so many times as a child. The scent of turkey and pumpkin pie mingled with the same stiff air I'd breathed for years. My mother hugged Finn tightly. "He's growing so fast. Just precious." My father simply nodded, eyes fixed on a football game on the TV. Ethan sat beside him with a beer can in hand, acting busier than he was. I was greeted like an old coworker showing up to an office reunion after a decade away. Only Grandma Clara was genuine. She pulled me into the kitchen, eyes slightly red but her smile warm as ever. "Thank you for coming, Grace. This dinner is for you." We sat down at 6 p.m. Finn chattered away about his new preschool and the neighbor's dog Spike, then suddenly turned to my mother. "Grandma and Grandpa only call Mommy when they need money, like a walking piggy bank." The air cracked like shattered glass. My mother chuckled nervously, her lips twitching. "Kids have such wild imaginations." Owen set down his wineglass and looked at me. I knew that look. "If you want to leave, I'm right behind you. But not this time." I placed my fork on the plate and slowly stood up. "Finn isn't imagining anything," I said, my voice calm to the point of eerie. "He listens. He remembers. Something my parents never managed to do with me." My father frowned. "This isn't the time to dig up the past." "I think it's the perfect time," I replied, then turned to Ethan. "Do you know where your college fund really came from?" Ethan looked puzzled. "Mom and Dad said it was investment returns since 3rd grade." I nodded. "Partially true. The rest came from the college fund I started saving in 6th grade. Plus, all the money Grandma Claire sent me every month." Ethan turned to our parents, stunned. I went on. "Remember that video you recorded while Mom was pregnant? When she said, Finally a boy, now our family will be complete. Your first daughter heard that when she was 6, and knew she was just the draft. Mom started crying, her hands trembling. You don't understand. No, Mom. You don't. You've never understood what it means to be a real mother. You never protected me. You never apologized for stealing everything I worked for, including my trust. I pulled a large envelope from my bag and placed it on the table. Inside are bank records of the unauthorized withdrawals. Letters from Grandma that never reached me. Legal documentation. All of it has been sent to an attorney. My father stood up. Are you threatening us? I looked him straight in the eye. No. I'm freeing us. You don't have to pretend to love me anymore. And I don't have to pretend to forgive you. I bent down and picked up Finn, who wrapped his arms around my neck, confused. And let's be clear, Finn will never know what it feels like to be treated like a burden. Mom staggered. Grace, we're still your family. No, I whispered. Family doesn't steal your future and call it sacrifice. I walked away. Without looking back, without regret. Behind me, Grandma Clara quietly rose from her seat, gripped her cane, and followed. Out at the car, Finn looked up at me and asked softly, Did I do something wrong, Mommy? I gave him a bittersweet smile. No, baby. You just told the truth. And the truth is always right. A week after that chaotic Thanksgiving, I got a call on a rainy afternoon. The number wasn't saved, but the voice on the line stopped me cold in the hallway at work. Grace, it's me, Ethan. I gripped the phone, my heartbeat slowing as if my body was bracing for impact. I'm not calling to explain myself, he said, his voice cracking. I'd like to see you, just once. If you'll let me. I agreed, but on one condition: the meeting had to be in a public cafe, not at home. Ethan arrived on time, wearing a plain button-up shirt, his face more worn than I remembered. The shine of the golden child was gone. He pulled out a chair and placed a thick envelope on the table. I want to return that money. The part that belonged to you. I didn't touch it. You don't have to do that. No. He shook his head, voice lower. I do. I need to do the right thing, even if it's late. When I was younger, I didn't know. But growing up, I saw it all. I just never had the courage to face it. I looked at him for a long moment. Use that money to become better. Do something that helps someone other than yourself. That's how you make things right. Ethan lowered his head, unable to hold back the tears anymore. I left the cafe with a lighter heart. Though the past was never something you could just fold up and file away. That night, I sat alone in my home office, warm light from my desk lamp glowing over 2 blank sheets of paper. I knew it was time to write. Not for revenge, but for closure. The first letter was to my parents. Short, without cruelty. I'm returning ownership of the house in Franklin. Consider it payment for a lifetime lesson. Never let anyone else define your worth. That house was where I became invisible. Now, it no longer holds power over me. Use it to live. Or to reflect. Your choice. The second letter, I wrote to Finn. I sealed it in a blue envelope, handwriting slanted across the front. To be opened on your 18th birthday. My dearest Finn. If you're reading this, it means you've officially become an adult, at least on paper. I hope you've kept your kind heart and clear eyes. I want to tell you a story. The story of a girl who once believed she had to work twice as hard, just to deserve love. But she learned something powerful. Real love never comes with conditions. In the family I grew up in, love was reserved for sons, for success, for appearances. And I, a daughter, didn't fit into any of those boxes. They took from me money, opportunity, recognition. But what they couldn't take was my belief that you would grow up in a better world than I did. I'm not telling you this to make you angry. I'm telling you because it's important to know. You can always start over. You can choose differently. Never let anyone, not even me, decide who you are. Love with an open heart, but stay sharp enough to protect it. With all the love I never got. Mom, Grace. I placed the letter in a locked drawer. No one would read it before the time was right. The following week, a thick envelope arrived at my San Francisco address. Inside was the deed to the old house in Franklin, signed over to me by my parents. They'd filed for bankruptcy. It was all they had left. I looked at the papers for a minute, then placed them in the drawer. Unsigned and unanswered. That evening, Finn wrapped his arms around Grandma Clara in the kitchen, both of them laughing as the cookie batch burned on the edges. I stood silently in the doorway, feeling something I'd spent my whole life chasing. Freedom. Not freedom from a house, but freedom from the cycle of favoritism, deception, and cruelty disguised as family. For the first time, I believed one thing with absolute certainty. History doesn't have to repeat itself. Grace's story reminds us that real love doesn't come from a title like family, but from how we're treated and valued. When favoritism and manipulation become the unspoken rules at home, walking away isn't betrayal, it's self-rescue. Grace didn't seek revenge through anger, but by building a better life. One where unconditional love is passed on to the next generation. Sometimes, the strongest way to end a toxic cycle is to make sure it doesn't begin again through you. What do you think about Grace's journey and her choices? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories to come.